It's in processing. पीछे मत आना नहीं.
Okay, thank you. I think it's live streaming now.
Yes, I'm
So-
starting the recording as well.
Yeah. Yeah, good evening, everybody. We have the 6th edition of the COA Social Reads Forum today. And we are happy to invite an old friend, a well-known architect, Gurjith Singh today. The context, his new book. Hello, Gurjith. Great
Hi.
to join us.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And
say friend from old days. Old friend seems like very old.
old days, yes, old days. Not in that old, so old days. And so the context is a wonderful monograph on Matharoo Associates. Matharoo Associates was founded by Gurjith Singh Matharoo and has played a significant role, I would say, in Indian architecture over the last 30 years. And the monograph, in a certain sense, kind of condenses and documents that search. And today, our conversation would be around the monograph and experiences of the practice. The author is Philip Judidio, and he has authored more than 100 books on contemporary architecture, including on Tadawando, Renzo Piano, Zaha Hadid, Pudzam Park, and several others. And he was the editor-in-chief of one of the most widely circulated French art monthly, right from 1980 to 2002. And now the author now lives in Switzerland. The presentation would be structured around, and of course, since we know, those of us who know Gurjit Singh's practice, inventive, innovative, serious, and playful at the same time. And so it is a different kind of negotiation, and maybe down the line after Gurjit's presentation we will talk about it. There will be comfortable and uncomfortable questions, so it is more to more to, but since Gurjit and I know each other, I think we know the so the real search will be how does one, I think, if I can briefly state before Gurjit presents, uh, one probable reading that one can make after seeing the monograph is that it's been a practice that has tried to unburden itself from this heavy architectural theory that has to prop up a practice. Would that be a fair assessment when I go through the monograph that
Yeah,
you're trying to?
Yeah, I guess it is because I think during the school days we never paid too much attention to the theories, so maybe we missed out on that. And so maybe it's another look, or as you can say, we're not trying to follow the norm.
Yeah, not trying to follow the norm, not trying to use theory as a crutch for the practice, and kind of directly. There's a certain directness with which a situation or a context is handled. So, Gurjit, we invite you and we look forward to this presentation.
Yeah.
And after your presentation, we could, maybe the presentation is about 30 to 40 minutes. And after that, we could have a open kind of a conversation that flows from that presentation.
Yeah,
And the viewers, just the viewers are posting on YouTube. So we would be collating their kind of responses as well as bringing it into our dialogue. Yeah.
I hope I can't see them.
No, you will not. You will not be able to see them.
Good enough. Thank you so much. Thank you, COA. Thank you, Jagdish and Durganand, for inviting me here. Such are the times. I mean, it would have been lovely to be all together in one space, but given the circumstances, let's live with what we have. Yeah. So I want to start a small presentation. I'm taken some projects from the book and slightly elaborated, so you get a hint of what kind of practice we have been having for all these years, especially for the newcomers, because there's going to be a lot of repetition for people who have seen our work before. So about 3 years back, we began to compile the works that we had done, and we thought maybe like a monograph, because this was like an essence or a summary was missing, and not realizing that it would become a mammoth project in itself. It took about 3 years and lot of time spent in collecting information of projects which were done long time back. And I'm happy that my team, also the publishers and the writer, they have come together and created this beautiful monograph that I am very proud of. And so we are going to just like look at some of the essence of this practice over. I think it's a good time to also look back at the practice, what we have been doing, because normally we have been following this approach that you don't think before doing. You must, like Durganand already said, a very direct approach. So given a problem, yeah, you react to it and you do a building, and then probably later you look back and see what has happened. So with that background in mind, I'm going to show you some projects. And what is this essence that we have filtered from our practice? It's just our idea, and I think it's open to debate. I would rather request Durganand to dwell upon these aspects, whether they are actually there or not there, and give a third person preview on the entire practice. So we start. I'm looking at the learnings from the last maybe 30 years, and mostly for about 25 years, this was our office. This was our place of work. This was our workshop. Looking at, I mean, it's just overlooking the banks of River Sabarmati. Fantastic space in Ahmedabad, center of Ahmedabad. However, 5 years back, we moved out and we came to a new place because this was becoming too small for the experiments that we were trying to handle. Anyway, this is like 20 years of the 25 years probably of the practice has actually happened in this space. Before this, after graduation from CEPT, I was in Switzerland, and I was fortunate enough to participate in a competition for my firm, and it was a competition for a TV tower in Bern, in the capital city of. And at that time, I thought, I mean, you dream of building something in the capital, and this was the Swiss capital, and this probably was my first project. We came third, and the jury comments were that it is the most beautiful, but the most expensive of all the entries. So they had about 6 entries. Even Kalatarava was invited, and our entry got a comment saying it is the most expensive of all the entries. So the first lesson that was learned happens to be frugal, or even the Swiss won't buy. And at that time, Switzerland was the most expensive country compared to India, maybe 14 times or so. And so we took this as a given that we have to, in our practice, we have to be extremely frugal. We are back in India, working in India, let's be frugal. Yeah. So within that same context, I'll take the first project, which is a government hospital that got completed in about 5 years back. And this is the ESIC hospital. ESIC is the Employees Insurance Corporation, which means that it is meant for the poorest of the poor people, the laborers, etc. So when this job came upon us, this was actually a Kanvinde building earlier, which got badly damaged in the earthquake, and it had to be brought down and rebuilt. So we were happy to be working in the shadows of Kanvinde. And here what we did was we said, let's make a very robust building, so which will not call for a lot of maintenance, etc. And there were lots of funds available for making the OPD and having the entire building air conditioned. We went against it and we said, let's try and use the funds elsewhere. So you have an OPD, which is a very simple OPD. It costs 5 rupees uh, an entry, and you have a night ward, which is 100 rupees. So from the outside, we try to break the block so that each uh, inpatient department has a view of the outside and a cross-ventilated ward. And from the inside, you can see very bare finishes, very simple. And that's the hospital. Today, it is a COVID hospital, and there are not too many cases coming out of this place. It was finally chosen for the Biennale in the Architectura in Chile, and was presented as a building which is an urban healer. So what we could do was to save, this is the OPD department that you see here, and we could save the funds from the air conditioning and actually make a huge garden for the public, because this is an area where it's an industrial area and there are no public spaces absolutely. So this is what we could achieve here. That is a large public garden. This is the same building you see from outside, from the garden side, and it's open to public, and the building is surrounding it. That's the plan. You see the bottommost is the OPD block, and these are the wards on the sides, completely cross-ventilated with gardens in between, and there is a huge public garden that has been created here. And that's a view from the tower. You can see the entire garden coming up. It's much more green today. Well, that's the kind of you can see the context here, which is quite industrial and devoid of any public spaces. And this is one large 7,000 square meters of public garden that has been created. Another view, all the wards look out into the garden, as you can see. A robust building, very simple construction. Also, everywhere we're trying to save the cost. So you see an example here that this entire stretcher movement, which is about 6 floors high, we had ramps. So to save costs, we have used the shuttering in an inclined manner. So what happens is that you have the shuttering which is inclined to the slope of the ramp. So you are not having any wastages. So it is actually, the entire wall is cast inclined. So measures like this, which would save costs here and there, that is what has been employed here. We come to the second philosophy, or one of the essence that we have filtered down, which is saying that every time there's a debate in the office, we choose something that is lesser in volume, there is lesser in mass, there is lesser in cost. So the general philosophy is, when in doubt, you reduce. When you don't have a clear position in mind, you try to take the one which is on the reductionist path. And when you are very clear what you have to do, surely reduce. I mean, that's either ways you go for the reductionist methodology. So under this, we have this project where this was a Jain temple, and it's a large complex in Rajasthan. It's on the border of Rajasthan and Gujarat, and they wanted something. They wanted a dharamshala, which would be an opulent one. So this was the image that they had in mind, that once you have an opulent dharamshala, they were calling it the VIP dharamshala. Then it would probably bring in more funds, etc., and it would provide comfort to the people who were staying there. When the brief was given to us, we had another image in mind, which is of this religion, which is very austere, um, thrives on the bare minimum that you can think of, and also the image of the vernacular in that area, which is very simple stone construction that was predominant in our minds. And what we created was a series of walls, thick walls in the same material, dividing the spaces in between, basically. So it's a set of thick walls that we created for them. And there was a predominant urge to have all the rooms looking at the temple that was already existing there. So, however, we wanted the rooms to open out onto the natural elements like the hills and the water body. There was already a water body there. And so what we could probably do, I mean, convince the client, was that we can have the access, the passage access, in the same access as a temple. However, the rooms would open out into the valley and the water, and that actually happened. So this is the plan that we have, which is basically those thick walls that you see. They hold on all the services, and you have voids in between, which basically open out onto the two sides, completely open on two sides. Even the passage that connects all the rooms, which would become a hindrance on one side, we have lifted it up and made it like a mezzanine passage. So you either go down or you go up to the first floor, or you go down to the ground floor, and it's a passage which is hanging in between. Now that's the section that you see. You see the passage here, which is hanging in the middle. So at the lower floor, one opens out onto the green, and you have the water body on one side. And on the upper floor, again the same thing, over the roof, and opens out onto the same side. And that's the view of the roofs above and below, which are through and through open, because all the services have been contained in the stone block. And that's the passage you see hanging in between, which is so very, very basic concrete, local stone, local masonry, Kota stone, just like bare minimum. And that's the kind of element you have, the passage on the other side. If you notice carefully, when we took the picture, we also noticed, after the picture was taken, you will see the staircases which are seen here. And there's one which is missing. Whereas it was meant to be the same thing all through. This we realized after the picture was seen. And this is what probably we consider this to be a contractor's contribution to the entire design project. Probably he read the drawing wrong, and he made the staircase in a different way. But today we can attach a philosophical value to this and talk about it. With that, we come to the third point, that normally when you are trying for something, you are mostly not succeeding. I mean, that's the norm. We make it like a norm. However, whenever we succeed, it becomes an exception. And a dear friend of mine, Rajesh, he interpreted our surname, which is Matharoo, as Matharoo, never lose. And this was an awakening moment for our family also, because they never meant it to be like that. So anyway, thanks to him, we take that as a philosophy for our works. Now, this is what is happening in the. We have a norm, like a norm which is followed all through. So you have your commercial housing, which happens like this. It's repetitive. It is claustrophobic, and there is absolutely no variation. It is absolutely monotonous. And when we got an opportunity to do a commercial housing, and this is what we went for. Finally, when you have, we tried to create variation. There are about 30 to 40 units, and each one is made a little different from the other. So you get a variation which is more vernacular than a repeated idea that we see all around. Not only that, we in this housing, which was meant to be, they wanted sloping roofs because it could sell very easily. We thought we should give a meaning to the sloping roofs, and we made them at an inclination which can easily take solar panels at a later date. Also, this entire thing, the first unit which was made was with ETHE. This is earth tube heat exchanger, which means you pass the air before it comes into your house through the earth, and when it comes into the room, it is already cooled. It's cooled to a temperature which is about 28 to 30 degrees, but it is fresh. It is naturally cooled. It is at a fraction of the cost of air conditioning, and this is one. The first unit was installed with this entire system, which was unfortunately not followed through because people still wanted air conditioning. People still wanted 20 degrees temperatures, which this couldn't provide. Well, anyway, so that's the another image of this vernacular look of this real estate commercial project, which is housing, and another one, which is basically you have all the slopes which are juxtaposed into each other, creating a non-monotonous environment like you find in the villages. And here you see the swimming pool of the clubhouse. Another view. We come to the fourth chapter now, which is to bring in light. I mean, light has become, especially because it is, we live in a tropical area. Our harsh sun is probably, it's a boon, and also it's the biggest problem. So both ways we deal with it. And there was another project. This was a project which we dealt with. So we say that with light you bring in delight. You know, let the light fall on the surfaces and create delight in the. And what happens with this light is, with natural light, is that the space is changing throughout the day and throughout the season, and that's the most beautiful part of any space that we create. So here was an invite to do a small temple and an ashram, very small site in the city of Ajmer, and what we did was to cut it off from the surroundings. We made the ashram all around the temple. This was a sect which was open to an interpretation. They didn't want a traditional temple at the start, and we could explore some possibilities. So that's the temple surrounded by the ashram all around. And the roof actually comes out like a water spout, which carries all the water, rainwater, falling in one large water spout in the end. That's the view, which is the mysterious one, which is actually, once you come inside, that's the entrance to the temple. And starting from a cube, it dissolves and becomes an open-ended structure at the top. So that's the whole idea. The entire form is made like a small cube, which as it goes up, becomes an open-ended structure. These are the windows of the ashram, which are facing the temple side. So you have a view of the temple from all the three sides. And on the other side, which is a passage, it becomes the view to the city all around. So that is in Ajmer, a desert city. So you have stone jalis, which are framing the city on the other side. And in this, we were able to get the sanctotum, divide up all the murals and the scriptures, etc. And it is bare and solid. And you can see the center of it is a shivling, which was designed by us with the Nandi and the entire paraphernalia, which is happening in the center. And that's the water spout, which is the culmination of the curved roof. Very raw, very basic, and with lot of play of the sunlight on the walls. Coming to the next philosophy, we like our buildings to act as catalysts. They help in enhancing the relationship between the man and the nature. Because of the building, the nature is getting enhanced. The relationship between man and nature getting enhanced. Both natures outside of us and inside of us. So that's another learning that we have developed over the years of practice, that we try that our buildings actually establish a much stronger relationship with the nature of the inmates. So here was another a brief which said that we would like to have a small outhouse which is completely open to nature. However, with creature comforts like temperature control, you have light control, you have insect control. All these things have to be there. And our inspiration here was a machardani that we used to sleep in our childhood, which would become another domain in itself, a separate domain. So this was a sketch which was presented. Normally, we find that the clients like to shoot down your first ideas, and they say that can we have something? Can we have an alternative? So we always know that they will settle for a second one. The first ideas are always like our first serve in tennis, which are strong and they can be faulted. So this was the first sketch made. We said no walls, nothing, completely open to nature, and structure right on top, and it was agreed upon. And then we had a problem of how to actually make it happen. Anyway, we struggled with our team, and finally the place opened. It was like a suspended slab without any columns, any structure, which is holding it up. It is all held from top, and on thin mullions, which are these thin steel columns everywhere, and which are with a layer of lead net all around. So finally, we could make a house which is completely covered in net. So it was insect free, right in the middle of Ahmedabad, and completely open to nature, all sides. The only connection from the terrace to the ground is this water pipe, which brings in all the rainwater, takes it up, and it falls from here, making a spectacle before going into the ground. But it is not lost into the ground. What we did was we created a huge rainwater tank, which is 14 lakh liters of rainwater underneath this. So you see this structure, which is a small one, and you have a huge tank which is underneath of it, which is 14 lakh liters. In their extension that we are doing now, which is almost complete, they have increased this volume to 28 lakh liters, because they said that this is good enough for 6 months. We would like to have rainwater for the entire 12 months. So that capacity has been increased, and now it is 28 lakh liters. Anyway, going back to the project. So basically, we have this structure which is held from top, this space frame, thin mullions, when you have blackout screens with chicks. You have the net screens as another layer. Then you have the glass layer, which is for air conditioning, and then you have finally the one cabinet, which is basically the entire storage. You have the kitchen, you have the TV, you have the dining table, and at the back of it you have the toilets, all the fitments, and this one cabinet. Basically, once you lock it, it becomes entire house, and then everything else is free. The top of the cabinet becomes a light source, which throws off light on the ceiling, so as to not attract too many insects. So that's the house that we see here, embedded in mounds, etc., so that you don't have any connect with the outside, which is our default Ahmedabad in urban scape. Next chapter, our interpretation of green. We say look at it with an open mind and add some blue to it. And it's a turquoise approach, which is basically saying that it's a scientific approach to looking at green. Now, it is not the cliched, you see earth and you say it is green. It's not that kind of an approach. It is basically saying that you have something which is scientifically tested, you have re-questioned, you have found answers, and then you're applying. So under this, there was this severe earthquake in the year 2001 or 2000, and there was funds available for the reconstruction of educational facilities throughout the state of Gujarat. These are some of the palaces which are completely devastated in the earthquake. So we had domes which had shifted from their positions. We had cracks all over the windows. And we were very fortunate to get some of these palaces to be restored. They were being used as schools at that time. And the mandate was from the government, the mandate was that we must demolish all these palaces because they have been badly damaged and make new schools in place of these palaces. We were given the job, we did a study, and finally we found that most of these could be actually restored. So we ended up restoring some of the largest buildings of Gujarat in that moment. And also, we were able to fit in the new buildings all around the palace compound, as the case was. Wherever there was space, we could fit in the new buildings. However, not letting the buildings be demolished. So if you see clearly, you will see that there is retrofitting done to all of these windows, domes, etc. And these pictures are taken recently. These buildings are about now, I would say 20 years old, and they haven't fallen. So again, we see this is the old palace, and we could fit in a new building all around it. In Jamnagar, this was the Sajuba Palace in Jamnagar, which is right in the center of the city. And this was completely restored. However, it was meant for demolition. We look at this another structure, which is the Singh College in Gondal, which was also meant for demolition, and we have been able to completely restore. This is about 8,000 square meters of space, completely restored, and it is still there. We look at another building, which is the Mungiba Queen Mungiba Palace, which is at the background. A new building was constructed by us, and however we managed to restore the old building to its glory. It is still functioning, absolutely no problems in 20 years. That's another view. You look at it looking from the old school to the new school, and you have the new school, which is completely taking the space which was left over by the main building. Under this program, we also ended up doing the only Sainik school in Gujarat. So this is in Balachadi. This is the place where the Jam Sahib, the ruler of Jamnagar, he gave refuge to Polish uh, uh, citizens who had escaped Hitler's invasion, and they had landed up in Jamnagar. So this was the place which is marked by that, and it is a Sainik school today, completely done by us. And that's another view of Sangram Singh Palace. You see some of the images inside, completely restored to its former glory. And yeah, that's the view from across the river, which is of a completely restored building. So this was another side. I mean, my point was when we were looking at this presentation, I thought I should bring up some of the works which were also to us. They were lost in the archives. You know, we never looked at them again. And this book was an opportunity to look back at the works that we had done earlier. So these are one of the biggest palaces. Luckily, they did not land in the hands of so-called heritage architects. Otherwise, it would have been another story for these palaces. Come to the seventh point, which is our idea that buildings must elevate one to a higher level of existence. So that's our point. That what is the purpose of a building? That it must take us to another level. You know, from our so another level is over time and over spatial layers. There must be something that the building reveals. And here it's a joint family house. There are 3 generations of family living, and they had a site right in the middle of Surat. So you see all the high rises all around. Even this side, it's a busy road. And what we did was we completely cut it off from the surroundings. We said, okay, we'll make a cocoon which is inside. So there are blank walls mostly, and that's the courtyard that happens right in the center of the house, which is in red sandstone, and it is marked by a ramp, a staircase on this corner, and a lift on this corner. So all the circulation elements are all around this, which people take, and this becomes a completely interior courtyard. Once you're inside of this, you're completely cut off from the high rises around. Nobody can look into it, and it is absolutely peaceful inside, where you can hear the birds in this dense environment too. If you look at the section here, that's the court, and you have the mezzanine. Building is of course closed from the outside, but it's completely open on the inside. Once you're inside this living space, it connects the court to the outside very smoothly. That's the entrance passage, which is blocking off the outside, however opening at the lower level to the nature and bringing in light from the top. That's the courtyard wall. This is at the lower level, it is completely open. You can see the court in the middle, and that's the outside veranda. So there is absolutely nothing coming in the way. It is open through and through. Also, if you look at the library on top, it has a window which is looking out into the green on this side. That's the jacuzzi, again in the basement. However, you get natural light from here. We were very fortunate to get some of the pictures back from Futagawa of global architect fame. And this is one of the pictures that was taken by him. So we are very happy to have some of these pictures in our book today. Futagawa is no more, but his legacy stays on. The last chapter, we come to buildings that move, buildings that move you. So we are able to make some buildings which have some moving elements. Like this is the real estate association building in Ahmedabad, the Karadai building in Ahmedabad, and that's the ground floor meant for exhibitions, which is completely open to the garden nature outside. And that's the view from the garden that you see here. The building is meant to be an office, but at times the brief was, it was a competition, and the brief said that it must open out to the public during events. We took the brief a bit too literally, and we said, okay, it's a closed building which can open, so let's do that. That's the courtyard which is inside of the building. The other side opens out into this courtyard. And that's the building actually opening, the 3 floors of walls which can pivot open or which can slide open whenever there is a public event. The building becomes completely transparent from being completely opaque, and people can just walk in for exhibitions. Yes, even elephants can. That's the staircase inside the building, which was innovatively cast so that we have only 65 of thickness, which is visible on the edge. So it's a public staircase, which is cantilevered outside and with just a 65 thickness at the outside. Interior spaces, the office spaces, which are very simple and clean. And then the culmination, about 5 years back, we moved into this new building of ours. We constructed our own office, and I'm going to, this is the culmination of all these ideas coming into one place, where we say it is not just witness to architecture, but there is a wit which is embedded in the architecture. This word was coined by architect Vagish Naganuru for us. He's saying that I have been witness to your architecture, but what he meant was that there is this witness to architecture that is commendable and worth talking about. So we have a very simple, you see the black here, it is so little. That's the construction. It's the studio. And since all our lives we had the river by our side, we could not leave it behind. So we brought it in the form of a pool, a swimming pool, which is a working pool, and you have the garden on the other side. And the section. So basically, we have the studio here, we have the garages here, and we have a cover which goes all over and covers the entire building. It's a very simple building, but the cover makes it that much bigger with the pool, etc. inside. This cover is acting like an insulation, like a waterproofing, and that's our waterproofing. You can see all the people here. This is our insulation. We use students as insulation. Pun intended. Basically, the roof, one second. This roof acts as the insulating roof to the entire structure. And additionally, it gives us this place which is used by for workshops, which is used for model making, which is used for students when there are lots of them. So we get at the price of waterproofing and insulation, we get an extra space, an extra floor that's on the top. This is the view from the other side, from the garden side, where you can see that roof on top. It's completely ventilated. So the entire office remains completely cool, and we use our air conditioning only for about 4 months. That also only half the day. We see a video here. This is the south side, and we have these louvers which can be adjusted depending on how you want them and how you want them for the sun. And that's the space which has a moving toilet. It's a small toilet which you see behind me, which is completely open to the green on both the sides. Yeah, so that's some of the projects that constitute this book. You have it here. We'll go back to the discussion. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Gurjith, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay. So that was a good overview of the book for those who have not yet got the book, and some thoughts. So I think we can just begin a kind of continue the presentation. I'm just curious to know, because you showed your earlier work, you showed your later work, and over time there seems to be, there also, while there's a continuity to the work, there is also a shift, and I think the later projects are, I had expected you to show some of uh, the Venice Biennale and your Chennai project, which I had seen, and
Uh-huh.
I had expected that, because what happens is that kind of reveals what you are engaged in right now, and
Yes.
I've seen the net house, and I think the Chennai project has come, takes it to another level beyond the net house. Obviously it's a sequence unfolding,
Yeah.
and so I'm just curious to know. Uh, let's begin with projects you began with. I was going to start with the Venice Biennale, so when it didn't, I think I'll come to that later.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll come to that later. So let's begin with certain projects that we've seen, and which, when I've come to Ahmedabad, I've seen those projects also. The net house is one of them, and you call it a catalyst, and there's a directness to it, and I like the way in which the design went, almost the design is also happening as the construction is happening, if I'm not mistaken, and that's how I think it happens. I don't know whether it's to
No,
be.
no, it's not. I mean, what had actually happened in that case was that there were two agencies which had to come together. There was the concrete agency and there was the steel agency, and there was a mismatch. So they came, the concrete guys came first, and they cast the slab in midair, while the steel guys were nowhere to be seen. So we had this whole slab hanging in the midair for about 3 months, and that became like a joke in in our fraternity that Matharoo has cast a slab and now he's thinking of ways to support it. I mean, we had the drawing; it was a contribution, contracts contribution that was we had it absolutely meticulously detailed out. Everything was worked out. Only there was this time gap which created this issue.
Yeah,
So
of course, I stand corrected on that, because I think what happens is that in several of your projects, I've seen uh, the thought has been very carefully crafted, but then on the site when it unfolds, I think you have a very dynamic way of kind of bringing it together. I've which doesn't get fully revealed in this presentation, but almost several of your projects, when one has seen unfolding, including your own office, I think I remember that wooden staircase and how it was unfolding with the carpenter, the wooden staircase
Yeah.
in your own office, or the net house, or the other house which you showed in Ahmedabad, as well as the Chennai house. So, would you like to reveal, and I mean, to the extent that you would like to reveal, how that dynamism of the actual condition of the site uh, is very different from the kind of detailing and precision with which the project has been conceived? That they look like two worlds that you kind of bridge.
Yeah. So what happens is, I mean, looking back, so there is some innovation in the way it is designed. So and um, when it comes to the contractors or the vendors who are actually executing it, it becomes uh, it becomes a challenge of sorts. And there are some surprises, like I showed you that staircase which went mirror completely. So the thing is that you have to work as a team. You have to work with the contractors, with the site people, and this collaboration sometimes becomes a major challenge. Compared to, say, just doing the designs on paper. So that's
Mm.
why we were very careful in this book not to add any unbuilt projects, because unbuilt projects are a different phenomena. You can do lots of unbuilt projects without any challenge. The challenge is that we actually got them built. I mean, that's the main crux of uh, the problem, that these are the projects which actually got built. Whatever. So we have completely kept away all the difficult projects which were there but never got built, which is a huge amount. So I think it is a challenge, and every time we work with new contractors, new vendors, new people on site, there is no standard people who do our, because we also don't know what is it that we are going to come up with this time.
Sure.
So I hope that
Um, No,
kind of.
it will build it up. We'll build it up. So this is because I was just trying to see how from the earlier projects, because if you look at the uh, issues that were brought about, uh, one, the idea of frugality, the idea of something being minimal, but behind it always there's a thought which sometimes when it's made so direct uh, can become humorous.
Yeah,
Like the directness itself can create the humor actually.
yeah,
And I think, for instance, I think in your own office there is that washroom which you showed. The door, if you try to open, will remain. Yeah, the door I think doesn't open, but the whole washroom opens.
yeah. That's
And
the
yeah, so
1.5 washroom
1.5
behind
ton.
me.
Yeah, so there is a certain directness, and it is and which kind of makes it uh, humorous.
Yeah, what has happened? I think over the years, as I see, internationally, architects have become very serious.
Hmm.
They seem to carry all the burden upon themselves. They think that they are in the position to solve all the difficult problems of the world. And I tell my students, I tell my peers, I tell myself that no, that is not our job. Let's make an interesting building. Let's make a building which creates delight. People should be happy, and and we are good. We are sensible. We should not use too many resources, and that's about it. You don't have to start solving all the problems of the earth.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of so we can be a bit more playful. We can enjoy our lives. We don't have to be burdened about everything. Let's do our
Hmm.
part in the best way possible. So that's the kind of approach we follow.
No, absolutely. But at the same time, there is a very intense, I mean, which you don't obviously wouldn't want to talk about it directly. But at the same time, there's a very intense rigor with which the building is, there is a precision, there is a lot of care. It is not casual. There is a lot of thought and precision, detailing how something is put together, how it works. There is that kind of an excavation of thought also, which I've seen you repair your bike also, on a Sunday. So I think uh, that similarity of looking at the components of an automobile, how they gather, how they group, how they relate, how they move, and the same precision that comes into the architecture. Would you think there is some underlying correlation to it, and or is it, what would you say about that?
I think, yeah, this bit of learning that comes from the automobiles. Basically, what happens is that each part is extremely important. Like there are cases where people have lost races because one, say, 2 rupee or 5 rupee screw was not the proper one. So each component has its place and importance in the overall construct. And we try to detail out each part of our design meticulously. Also, I think because we are working a little bit against the norm, and there is a bit more effort to convince the clients to accept our ideas, so we have to
Hmm.
detail out a bit more to make it watertight and present it to the clients. So maybe that approach has actually worked in our favor. At least the buildings get very well resolved and completed.
Hmm. So would you say that, now we'll come back to the lighter part now, would you say that casting a slab, and let's say it could float on its own without any support, would have ideally been the manner in which you would have liked to look at your work? I'm just asking it in a very hypothetical way, because what you did in Venice in a certain way was trying to defy that sense of burden of carrying. The wall in history, if you see the history of 3,000 years of architecture, or a column has has sadly been burdened with carrying something, all the time. And
Yeah.
you seem to be saying in your architecture, can that burden be removed? And your Venice project, as the Venice Biennale, which you were looking at free space, that, and which then translated into the Chennai home, which we had seen. Would you say
Mhm.
that's also one underlying theme, where you're wondering why for 3,000 years the wall and column has had to carry all
So
this
burdened.
load and burden, and which has come into the schools of architecture?
I think it is a nice interpretation from you. We don't see it like that. We thought that let's make it playful, and because we are capable of doing it, we did it. We didn't think of the 3,000 years. That's the burden that the wall was carrying, and we have freed it. But yeah, the thing is that once you assign roles and you say that's the definition of a wall, that it must carry, or a column which must carry a load down. Once you remove it from the burden, that it
Hmm.
has to carry the load, there may be different ways of carrying the load. And then the column becomes suddenly very free.
Hmm.
So we try to do this kind of uh, analogies where you are taking the element out of its definition and
Hmm.
giving it a new meaning,
Hmm.
and
No.
thereby creating suddenly you see these items or the elements in a different role, and they become different. They now they have a different probably role to play, and that's what probably I was trying to mention the word delight. That's what create delight. Suddenly you see something performing in a different manner. It's not how you are used to seeing it. And
Hmm.
also, I think in terms not just the elements, it's the spaces. You see the spaces have completely transformed them. We do these moving walls, and you see the space has become so evocative just because the wall has moved, and it is suddenly created something totally different from what it was meant to create.
Hmm.
So Yeah, I think I mean that's one of the reasons and goals that we try to imagine, that let's not be burdened by so much of literature and so much of what has been said about a wall, and let us be a little more free. Let's assign them different roles, and maybe they can play them well.
Yeah, because I find that one is this burden of history, the burden of a certain theory as a crutch to architecture, which has become a norm, at one level. And another one is the burden that a column has to carry, or the burden that the wall has to carry. Yeah, 3,000, maybe even 5,000 years it has carried. And then in the net house, you're casting a slab before the structure is cast, before the. Uh, so you really, maybe intuitively at some level, the architecture is trying to say whether this burden can be removed. And when you say assign other roles, uh, there is a strange paradox. I think in one of your projects, that there are four columns in the home. I don't recollect the name of the home right now.
That's my own house, but
The four columns where that's your own house. Yeah. So
yeah.
those four columns now appear as if they were carrying some heavy load and are larger, but they're not carrying that kind of a load. Am I right?
Yeah. So, like we ended up with this set of three columns actually,
Hmm.
which were inside the wall. When we brought them out, they were these ugly looking 9 by 18 standard columns of uh, a commercial apartment that we had, and what to do with them. So we thought let's make them nice and round. So we made big rounds of uh, about 2 feet diameter columns, and they were cast, so they look like heavy columns. And then there were three.
Hmm.
So one was missing, one corner was missing, and we finally cast a column without any reason there, just to complete the effect. And it looked like the talk of the town, because and then we interpreted saying that this line that passes through these four columns, one is the line of the city of Ahmedabad, the old city of Ahmedabad, and the second one is the line of Doshi's office to Sarkhej. So that is the axis, and we are defining that. So we are eating there every day. So that's our dining space in the
No,
house.
I recall that visit because those columns have a very Egyptian proportion, but they're not carrying that kind of. They're not
Yeah.
carrying. So more and more, when one looks at several of your projects, let's say redefining the hospital as a garden,
Yeah.
that's another reinterpretation, very direct. But where one would expect a hospital, you really then see that you come to a garden, you know? And
Yeah, I think that we're trying to do more and more. It was direct. We found that at 5 rupees for OPD, people could just enter and enjoy that space, which they didn't have. So now you see lovers who come there and spend times. You see people who are just loitering around and they make that a place. It is also a refuge when there are riots. It becomes an official refuge area because it's a riot-prone area. And for these multiple uses, it was also selected for the Chilean Biennale, where
yeah,
they said that. So we're calling it the urban healer. It's like some one space which is actually meant for a larger populace than just the patients.
mm,
So you have the place for the patients, and you also have a lot of spaces for public at large. And this whole huge garden, where there's no garden in that whole vicinity. So people just come and spend time there, which is quite nice. So there is another interpretation. For example, the Prathama Blood Center, which was which where we won the project in a competition. It was one because we said that the primary space is a public space. It is not a hospital or a laboratory space. So now you see in that public space, a lot of children come and spend time,
mm,
in a blood center.
mm,
So we try to see what a building can do otherwise. For example, our office is a weekend house also. It has got a pool, it has got a big kitchen, it has got a garden. So now we call our guests to our office. So we have some discussions on the projects that we are doing, on the architecture of it, and also we have the entire space available. So beyond the original function that we are assigned for, there is another function which is attached, which is could be quite contrary, and you will not imagine that these two things can be coupled together. And that is what we are trying to do more and more. We're saying that space can be like a multi-use space. When it is not, for example, our office, when it is not an office, it is our weekend house. You know, for the 2 days we have the pool. And when it is not our weekend house, office can enjoy the pool. Why is it that it has to be only left aside in some space and at the same cost? So the cost is divided and you get two functions together. Yeah, so I think that is probably like the crematorium is visited by so many people. In Surat, the crematorium that we did, people just come and spend time there because it is a nice place to spend time rather than coming for the funerals.
No, absolutely. I'm just curious. I think one of architect Charles Correa's last presentation, at SEPT, and he was there, and we were together. And during that time, I think he actually visited your office and a few projects, if I'm not mistaken. During that was the time. I'm just curious to know what was the kind of conversation when architect Charles Correa visited these buildings. What was the nature of that conversation? What were his insights into that experience, and what did he convey?
Uh, I think he's one of the greatest architects that we have had. I always admired him. So he didn't know me, and I didn't know that he didn't know me. And he was invited to our college SEPT, and he gave a presentation, and I was one of the spectators far away from the front benches. And then just after the presentation, he called out and he said, "Can you come here?" So I came to him. He said, "I want to see your building." So that was such a surprise. And I said, "Yeah, I am ready. You come tomorrow." He had a busy schedule. We took him to some of the buildings. We got some fantastic comments on how we should be practicing, etc., etc. And at the end, he said that he had some other engagement. And he said, "I'm so sorry, Gurjith. Wish I had more time and I had not committed to these engagements. I would have spent more time with you and seen your buildings." Um, Later on, I mean, I didn't understand exactly what he liked, and very unfortunate. Then within 2 years, we lost him. Later on, Peter Cook wrote a small essay on Charles Correa, and he said that he was one guy who could bridge between the mainstream and the boutique, that he could do both, and he sees the same bend or same trait in our works, which was fantastic. I've never met him officially, and but somebody who could relate this, we didn't understand what Charles Fourier stood for. I mean, we liked his work, etc., etc. But really, and then finally coming together and saying that you could do the mainstream and you could also do the. It is not necessarily that one architect has to choose between doing boutique works and between doing mainstream work. It could be at ease doing both of them, and in the same sentence we got related to Charles Perry. It was like a big honor for us.
In the invitation that the Grafton architects, when they invited you for the Biennale, the Venice Biennale on free space, uh, what was the theme or the crux of that invitation? What is it that they saw in the work that they could see it as an expression of free space, and how did you interpret it?
Yeah, so this Yon is a fantastic lady, and I'm a staunch admirer. And it so happened that in one of the conferences, we were seated next to each other, and we didn't know each other. So to break the ice, she said, "What is the kind of work that you do?" I said, "I've done this, and a curtain door." She said, "Oh, curtain door! I was in the jury, and we selected your design." And we broke the ice, and since then, whenever we meet, we have been talking about drinks in different places, etc., etc. Never about architecture. And then we were pleasantly surprised that there was an invite from uh, Graftons to be part of the Binale. And it was so appropriate, I couldn't imagine that there can be a theme which is so appropriate to our work. We could not give a name to it, and she just called it free space. That it is something additional that you give to architecture, which is not in the brief
Mm.
and which is for common use. And it was fantastic because the interpretation and everything. And we made this installation in Benale, and later on the house got completed with similar ideology. And we had this whole above 7 feet. You have the structure and the walls and the planes doing their own bit, creating spaces and continuum, which is not hindering the function. It is actually adding to the function, and you get something which is additional to the brief that any client had asked for.
Yeah,
So
I would think maybe at some other time this presentation doesn't may not lend us that, but this idea of especially what you expressed or what you tried in the Chennai house, a very tight site. I would say it was an extremely tight site
yeah,
to attempt a home also, and within that to use the notion of free space by redefining wall, column, cutting, open. I think you have some phrase, a four-letter phrase for that. I don't
yeah.
exactly remember
Cut,
the
fold,
phrase.
bend, and play.
Yeah, cut, fold, bend, and play. And then that whole uh, way of creating space and openness and connecting inside and outside uh, really makes that home look maybe twice or thrice as larger than you no more feel that small site, you no more feel that confinement. And it is a normal urban plot where you probably cannot look out, where every architect is struggling to look out because it's such a tight site, and one cannot even bring in nature into it easily. But through this kind of a play, which the book reflects, I think your presentation today didn't bring that in, uh, where you really show how that by playing with that envelope, by playing with the wall, you really make space appear much larger than what it is. And
Yes, this we try to do this for small houses or small buildings. We try to maximize the space, so one has this feel of living in a much bigger or larger environment. When we have a large program, we try to do the opposite. We try to make it look small.
mm,
So that's always like for joint family houses where there are three generations of families living together in the same house. How to break down the scale and make smaller cocoons for each of them becomes a important criteria. In this case, it was a very small, tight site with just a corner opening and surrounded by high rises all sides. A big challenge, and we could manage it by breaking the barriers between the inside and the outside, between the structure and the enclosure, between say walls and columns and slabs and mezzanines. Yeah.
the yeah, exactly. So to me, the Chennai project seemed a great challenge because that's the kind of sites that most architects would land up with, you know.
Yeah.
And to get a large site and to get all that space and is rare, but I think most often an architect has to confront a very tight site, a very heavy, intense program on a tight site. And I think that the Chennai project reveals that even in such conditions, it's possible to create a certain sense of free space and break it open, and under very, very challenging conditions. Wouldn't you think that that was probably one of your most challenging projects in terms of constraints of space? And whereas your other projects may not have had such a strong constraint. I'm just trying to.
So we have done these very tight scale projects before, though they are not so known. Maybe they are not they've not come into the limelight. So that has happened before also, and yeah, but this is one of the challenging ones which has been finally brought into the limelight and published, and also covered in the Biennale to that extent.
How does I mean, it's not directly related to the monograph, but how does, I think you were the design chair at CEPT for some
The
time.
Seepage is the Biennale, in case we missed
That's
out.
the one. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one. And
So it dissolves because of the aluminium. It completely dissolves in the surroundings of the arsenal in Biennale.
hmm.
So becomes one.
No, I had the opportunity of seeing that project at Venice, but I think we missed each other every day and we never met. Though we were there together and only on the phone we were meeting. So we
Yeah.
never met. But I did see the project in Venice. I'm just curious to know, uh, let's say in your own studio project, where you looked at this idea of the pool, the memory of Sabarmati coming in. Uh, how did you conceive of that space as a studio? How did you conceive? What were the beginnings? I would you take us through that? And then the next question, which I was starting off, was you were the design chair at CEPT for some time. I don't know, or presently the design chair. I'm not aware, but you were the design chair for a considerable period of time. And so, from the next question I would like to, before I forget, is how did you bridge this notion, this directness of practice in at CEPT? These are the two questions, if you can.
Uh, Sorry, can you come back on
Yeah, well,
the
let's stick to
question?
CEPT. Maybe we'll stick to CEPT first. As a design chair, you are going in there. I'm curious to know what was the kind of engagement,
Yeah,
what
I
was the
was.
kind of.
I mean, the reason for staying back in Ahmedabad was that our director, uh, Professor Varki, he asked me to take some classes. And so I did not choose Ahmedabad because I had to take some classes. I had to stay put in Ahmedabad, and this whole journey started. And we started taking part in competitions. Luckily, I had a small part of that office that you saw on the riverside as a rented space with two drafting boards. So we had the two drafting boards, and I would sit with the window because there was hardly any work, and look at the garden and the birds, and see the moonrise, etc. So spent a lot of time, and then finally we bought over that entire office, made it into a large studio, etc., etc. But uh, always with the nature, always looking out, always by the river, etc., etc. And at that time, a lot of students used to come over. Whenever we were doing competitions, it would become a place where in the evening students would land up, and it was such a vibrant space that, and plus I was teaching as a visiting faculty, so it was maybe 25 years that I kept this profession also alive of teaching. Then I was made the design chair for the architectural design, and for 3 years I had that position. And now since last 2 years I'm not holding that position anymore. So uh, the ideas for the students were similar, that don't be burdened, don't try to save the earth. Maybe we'll find a James Bond for that, but let's make a nice building. That's the approach. The ideas could come from anywhere, just put them down there. So very direct kind of on hands-on kind of approach that we have followed, and I think there have been some students who like that approach over the years. So I'm quite satisfied with the teaching experience. We have our own program which we hold, which is called the Pan India Travel Studio. With COVID etc. happening, it has been deferred for maybe a year or so. But we will take up that studio where we go to different places and actually do a design problem with the students. So that has been quite successful also. So there's always this time with the students, which is extremely important, and also in our office, like I told you, that top space is available for the students to come and do their workshops, etc., and work with us, whatever. So that's still ongoing.
Sure. How do you see? I mean, the book, I think towards the end, while you does show a few unbuilt projects in terms of projects that could be happening over the next. And
So,
one project, doesn't it? If there
yeah,
are
please.
some, I think the last few pages has projects that may happen over or are in progress over the next few years.
Hmm.
The yeah, and one project which kind of the Sikh Heritage Center. Uh, that project was particularly different from the unfolding, if I may say so. And is there any other kind of thought process evolving right now as well, or evolving something in the office, or how are you re-looking at? I know it's just a model or it's there, but it kind of feels an exploration of a new direction which is opening. And
No, you're absolutely right. And uh, this actually came from the Gujarat government. The CM donated some funds for the development of the one small town in Gujarat, and completely not known to me. Guru Nanak had spent time in this town on the way to his voyages to Mecca. I came to know that actually in 1500s he made two voyages to Mecca and came back. And this used to be a port, and it was so stunning that this in the earthquake that happened about 100 years, 150 years back in Gujarat, which is supposed to be most devastating earthquake, the port sank completely. It used to be a port which sank completely, and they say that the Indus River used to pass from that land. So it was the bank of Indus River. Indus River shifted its course towards Karachi a bit, so it is no more passing from there. The port has sunk, but the house that the Guru lived in is still intact, absolutely intact. So they asked us to make a heritage center there, for the pilgrims, a gurudwara and langar hall, etc., and some rooms to stay. But you are so humbled by this entire phenomena, that it is
mm,
earthquakes have happened, this has happened, and it is in Gujarat. Then there are some small buildings which are still standing there, and we thought that we should just make it in. That's probably much more important than what we build today. So we are doing a very simple structure, which is within, I mean, same materials that are being used there.
mm,
So it completely blends in with the surrounding. However, creating that extra strong space where this UNESCO protected monument would be housed. Yeah, so it's a bit different from our approach in other, but I think the urban context, or not an urban context, but the vernacular context is much more important here
mm,
that we can think of. So there is a big challenge because you have to fight your trustees because they are looking at a preconceived notion of a gurudwara and a langar hall, and you are fighting them and saying no, 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 this is a different place, and it calls for something completely completely different from what we have been doing otherwise. That is there. Also, we are doing large social housing where we're trying to give as much benefits to the habitants as we can within the small budget and the area that is assigned to us. So these are the new directions that the practice is moving now, which I think would continue further.
No, I was to come to that multi-use development. I think that's what you're calling as the social
Yeah,
housing.
yeah, at
Yeah, what
Hyderabad.
you
Yeah,
in Hyderabad. So Telangana. So to me, those two projects I know are presently emerging in the office. It's not built. It may be the early stage or mid stage. I don't know, but the book kind of is just giving us a glimpse of it.
yeah,
But and it's ending with that glimpse.
yeah.
Besides the elephant in that those large opening doors. But I just think, is that an expression that the practice is now plunging into new realms, or new kind of challenges that the present situation is putting onto us, that it is morphing the practice also in some way? I was just wondering when I saw that.
Oh, I think it's very interesting that the practice should morph.
Mm.
I think it should change with times and with context. And also, I think over the years, when you look at the projects, they don't seem to be similar to each other. There may be
Absolutely.
a underlying theme, and given a brief, I think the fresh reaction or an immediate reaction to that is what we try to keep it as a as a strong point in our architecture, that we react to the brief in the strongest of ways. So now this is the social housing site. We ended up, it's low cost, it's extremely affordable, but it has a like half the apartments, maybe 1,500 apartments have a view and a balcony to lake edge. Now, where can you think of such a place? You buy an apartment on loan for 40 lakhs, and you get a huge balcony where you can put 4 beds, and it looks into the lake and the sunrise and the moonrise. So we're very happy with this kind of contribution that we can probably make, and architecture can make into the lives of simple people, ordinary people. So that's one side of it, and also I think the kind of humility that comes from doing these religious places, and looking at the lives of some people, which uh, uh, which transforms the architecture. So it may not be that strong or that rugged. It is soft and it is blending, and because you are a lesser person than the importance of that place. You're no more you're no more an architect, but you are just a participant in in these areas. That is how I would take it. Let's see how. I mean, the book is already 1 year old because of COVID. It could not come out in time. So the two constructions are well in place now.
Okay.
So they would see the end of the day soon.
So to kind of, before we close, if we were to go back to your thesis, because that's something we remember very clearly, and it was, even the title was simple and direct, and it said something like clarity in architecture, if I'm not mistaken. That was the
Yeah.
thesis, clarity in architecture. So would you say that that theme, or what you are exploring in your final year in SEPT, clarity in architecture, and the manner in which your practice has now unfolded over the last 30 years, look, which actually look have passed very fast. But is there a connect? Is there that somewhere you would like to convey that if we address issues directly, you really find some completely new, fascinating ways of living, or fascinating ways of just inhabiting space.
I don't know, but I mean, at least I remember that to be one of the best periods of my life where you didn't have anything to do. You were still probably getting paid a little bit from your family, so you didn't have to ask for yourself, and you were spending most of the time in doing pure thinking, without doing actually any work. So, I mean, to me, that period uh, stays like that in my memory more than what I got out of it. But now, since you are saying this, I I think there is an impact, because if you spend 1 year just thinking about what matters to you, it will have an effect in the later years for sure. So maybe I think this, given a brief, given a context, given a budget, you strike directly and you hit upon all those things in the best possible manner and come up with an innovative solution is probably uh, the the way I would look at our attempting at solutions. So they may not look at. I mean, sometimes you find clients, they say, okay, but this building is very very different. We don't want it like that. I say, yeah, because that's not for you. It was for somebody else, and they find it absolutely all right with that kind of architecture. So for each, it is different, and yeah, you learn in the way that you can probably react to briefs in the most direct and clear manner. So I would
Correct.
still hold the clarity as an important aspect of our
Of
practice.
Yeah. So the idea of the talk series. Let me now state the idea of the talk series, that or the book reading series that council has initiated, is not just to have a dialogue on a book or to talk about a book, but the idea is that after this conversation, several schools are invited to take off from this conversation into the studio, maybe a final year or a third year. And so about quite a few schools have shown interest now.
Okay.
And so they would, this book or the body of work would be a starting point for maybe 5 students who are doing their thesis,
Mhm.
or someone doing third year taking on a certain project. It could be a crematorium, or it could be a blood bank, or and that this book, this conversation would then percolate into the schools and actually become one of the reference points or anchor for a studio. So we will come back to you, and this is an open invitation to other schools and heads who are watching this dialogue, because several have already got in touch with us. And so this is not, this is actually the beginning of something else. This is not the end of a conversation, or to say there's a book, and which generally happens in these webinars. So
Yeah.
we thought it needs to be, some provoke into the next phase of design. And we hope to invite you when these schools are grappling with these ideas, with the book as one of the anchors. Of course, they may agree with it, disagree with it. There'll be a
Yeah.
conversation around it, But then a critique develops, but a critique not from words, but a critique from immersing in design. A
Yeah.
critique from looking at, trying to say, how does one inhabit space, and I think from that point, the monograph put together has um, kind of, and even the writing, I think, reveals, is direct. It reveals a range of the concepts and how they've evolved. And so we do look forward to the next phase, where the schools take it up and invite you maybe at some point when you're free, and when they finished it. And we hope to, from that, evolve a monograph of students who reacted to this group,
I think it's
reacted to
a fantastic idea that it is taken further, and at least a bunch of students attempt something that is garnered from this kind of a talk and take it further. and I'll be more than happy to be part of that. I mean, I prefer the offline much more than the online, but yes, hopefully the situation is going to become much better in the coming months, and
Yeah,
let's look forward to it.
sure, absolutely. We would hope for a offline in studio, of course, and in all probability that may happen in February and March. I think, or in March, I think it's going to happen. Um, Certain schools, the final year is already offline. They come into the studio with social distancing norms, and it
Yeah,
seems to be working well. So, but the reason we discuss this is also because this conversation is going as much to Southeast Asia, many schools in India. So they realize that this kind of a conversation is going into the studios, and if any school, any student is looking forward for a engaging in a thesis of this nature, they can always write to us, and we are there to kind of. We've already done that with the earlier talks. So there are 5 schools already taking off from the earlier talks
okay,
of Rahul Mehrotra's, Palasma's, and even Kengo Kumar's talk. Kengo Kumar's talk unfolded into the competition also. So there
okay.
are each talk and each book is really unfolding into something more. And so, Gurjit, any last statements before we can close for the day and then reopen
Yeah, I
again
think
with
I'm hoping that a lot of students are watching, and uh, I would say for them that be fearless and just go all out and do what you feel like, rather than being burdened by theory or professors or the schools or whatever. Yeah, that's my advice to them, because this 1 year that we have lost in offline is going to in it's going to be quite heavy on us. So let's try to get back as soon as possible.
Thank you, Gurjit. If one can compile, I think you're saying don't be burdened by theory. Try to remove the burden of the wall and column which they've carried for 5,000 years and enjoy life.
Yeah,
Design
that's
directly because
important.
that's the role of the architect,
Yeah,
and I think it's a wonderful monograph and reveals 30 years of a trajectory. And when I saw it, I couldn't believe 30 years has passed. It didn't feel like that. But
yeah.
it's
We stayed together in the early stages, so
yeah, in the early stages in the late 80s.
yeah,
And 30 years has passed. You realize that only when you hold the monograph. Otherwise, you don't realize that 30 years has unfolded in this. So
so true.
amazing work, and we look forward to the. I'm more curious about the next 2 projects if they're on, and because
Yeah, yeah, they're
they're
happening.
kind of
Yeah, yeah.
testing your trajectory, and so I'm really looking forward to those 2 projects especially. Mm.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
So thank you, Gurjit, and let's keep in touch. And thank you for the
Okay. Thanks, UA.
yeah,
Thanks, Durganand. It's
yeah.
been wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.